The Happening and Joy, the first IVF story. Um, I wanted to post this, and I wanted to share this part because this is our past election on the 2024 ballot question in the general election. Because this is very pertinent to both historical accounts, which are based off of real stories, that this is still how we are looking at women's rights. And here's the question. It says, the proposed amendment confirms an individual's fundamental right to reproductive freedom, including but not limited to the ability to make and effectuate decisions to prevent, continue, or end the individual's pregnancy. It provides the state may not directly or indirectly deny, burden, or abridge the right unless justified by compelling state interest achieved by the least restrictive means. Now, this just indicates stuff about abortion, but honestly, the rights of women with abortion and IVF are kind of grouped together because it is essentially all considered fertility rights. And that is why The Happening has been so eye-opening to me this semester. So we have two ethical dilemmas. We have Annie Ernaux, who is the writer of The Happening, of course, and Judy Purdy. This is actually the actress who played Judy Purdy in Joy, the first IVF film. I thought I would just do kind of a comparison of both stories to let you know how I've analyzed it. Annie Ernaux. I thought it was really important to talk about the year of her abortion, 1964. Women's choice in France. Obviously, there was not. She shared her story through this narrative because it can happen to anyone. What she didn't want was a story that would cause a political debate, but maybe open the eyes to a damaged view. While her reasons were so unique to her, there are many other women who choose to get abortions for other reasons. So her story has encased her feelings of shame as she hides her condition from her parents, but she also opens herself up to a limited circle of people around her. Her narrative is actually really important for the understanding of the once unsafe practices that women were forced to rely on. But it's taken years of hard work and political change to adopt newer practices that are fundamentally safer for women. So Joy, the first IVF story. This takes place like 14 years later in London. Women's choice was actually limited. I believe abortions were allowed because I mentioned that in the movie. And they were legal but still shamed by religious members, the religious community. So there are a lot of problems with wanting to have an abortion. So the main character, Judy Purdy, joins a team of doctors and scientists, including Robert Edwards and Patrick Steptoe, and discovered that the best course of getting an infertile woman pregnant was to extract the egg and attempt implantation. So this was seen as playing God and shamed by the religious community. So the flip side was that it helped women who were considered barren to have children, to bear children, which is very important. Because IVF discovered other possibilities like finding a potential treatment for endometriosis, which is actually the leading reason why women are infertile in the first place. One of the doctors, I believe this was Dr. Steptoe that said it, he said, it's amazing what science can do. Because that was a quote, I put the timestamp, which is 4120. The comparison between the two works. So Annie Ernaux's story is her own narrative, and Joy is based on a true story, but they both have similar struggles and achievements, where IVF is still indifferent in the world. They both offer a clear expectation on women making their own choice per their own health. The reason for analyzing Joy along with Ernaux is because of the motives this type of science. While Ernaux declines the modesty and gives the reader and the details of her trauma with her abortion, Joy explores the potential with implementing procedures like laparoscopy for explorative surgery. Um, those procedures led to safer practices today for both IVF and abortion because they're experimenting with ways to make women more comfortable and not to increase pain. So within their own time, the legality of performing these procedures were like still highly invasive, but also invasive to women's bodies. And the happening. I'm just going to go back and recap what happened in the happening. Annie's decision to get an abortion depended on her youth and not wanting to be involved in a loveless relationship, accepting that women have many personal limits, especially if a woman is a career bound or still in school. Understanding Annie's disposition and living on the lower end of society where her family raised her in a tough post-war economy. Her parents provided for her, but they had limited means and lived frugally. Her family was also religious, so she couldn't tell her mother everything. So understanding Annie's story provides that the inequality in our world creates an awful imbalance, especially when women like Annie, who had a chance to break free from generational poverty to embrace their own future. So why should any woman feel shame in that? I think that's important to express because she felt shame in having to make a decision that was actually better suited for her. And that is not what any woman should ever have to be left with, not on their heads. So because we didn't watch this movie with our class, this is something I found on Netflix, I wanted to add one of my favorite scenes. The clip of the picture is actually from the end of the movie after the baby is born, of course, the first IVF baby. But there's a scene where Judy Purdy is arguing with her mom about her job. So she's having a debate about her career choice, talking about how she started off as your Christian nurse, and now she's working with experimental fertility team and she's finding herself defending her life choices with her mother, who is super religious. Her mother actually quotes this verse in the Bible, which best serves the Christian perspective. It said, Isaac prayed to the Lord on behalf of his wife because she was childless. The Lord answered his prayer, and his wife Rebecca became pregnant. Genesis, book 25:21. Another argument that her mother had made was that how can the same doctor who performs abortions also create babies? So basically, she made a connection that one version of the doctor played the devil while the other version played God. This is the same doctor. So it's like, how can you erase the fact that you kill babies and then you create them? The Christian perspective is very closed off to the title of choice in this whole narrative. So there's ethics that we need to talk about, like the dangers and ethics of early abortion. Because abortion was illegal for so long, the practice has never happened in a hospital setting. Arnaud explains the process of finding a hole in the wall nurse that would eventually perform her abortion under the table. Aside from the dangers and the potential for infection, the procedure wasn't modest. She doesn't hesitate to explain the unusual procedure that she had endured. So like the graphic scene where she's describing the tube that she had to carry around for about a week. Because of the nature of the seemingly invasive practices, abortions today are done under anesthesia and in a hospital setting. And this is something that wasn't attainable to Annie, where in her time she had to risk infection. Sympathy for her understanding and the shame that she expressed in having to find a practice that would actually help her. Dangers in IVF. So there's a lot of dangers and ethics in IVF. Early IVF was an experiment. Of course, it was only ever performed on lab rats before they used human subjects. They picked a panel of women who have experienced infertility, and what they found was and this is based on the movie, in that some women had many extreme conditions that led to their infertility, like obstructive fallopian tubes. The doctors used laparoscopy for many findings, but they also ran a risk of tubal pregnancies, like occurring ectopic. Um, the first IVF baby was born via C-section, and the earlier C-sections were done under a twilight, where the mother was completely asleep for the procedure. So in the final scene of the movie, like you kind of see how that happened, where nowadays moms who have C-sections are fully awake. Medicine has changed a lot since the 70s. So through its fascinating, though it's fascinating, the science had allowed humanity to create test tube babies. The science went through years of resistance, and it was like basically demonized because members of the science community joked about the potential of cloning humans, which isn't ethical today and will never happen. They just wanted to find a solution for infertility and women who were left feeling empty without the ability to create a family. So I wanted to do a little comparison and kind of like post this. I'm not going to read it out loud, but this basically has like abortion on one side, IVF on the other. Basically, just the things that I wanted to throw around. I did also want to add a personal reflection because, as you know, I've been talking about my journey, which is very similar. And one of the things that I've learned going through my journey, and I didn't write this down, is that a lot of doctors talk about, like, in the fertility world, they talk about how they can actually, like, check to see if the genes are good, like, if there's no extra chromosomes, and um, you get to pick and choose, like, what you want. I firmly believe that a baby is just a baby. Um, I don't care if a baby has an extra chromosome. I just think that there is a gift that women bear when they are able to get pregnant, but also I feel like we are designed, our bodies are designed to make that choice for us as well. And things will happen when they happen. But also, I've been through a lot of the same procedures that the women in the IVF movie have been through, but I cannot deeply express how much sympathy I have for Annie Arnault and what she went through, because I can't imagine the kind of pain that she was in. But I just wanted to leave it with that because these the story was actually so fundamental in learning about someone else's narrative and defining our choices